Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Year One. For those of you that are returning guests, welcome back. For those of you that are new, I'll explain very briefly what we're all about here. This is really a podcast to dive deeper into the successes, the fears, the hacks, the good and the scary, all of the things about first-year ownership of an agency. I'm your host, Christian Ganey. I'm the co-founder and partner at Outer Kind. We're a creative agency based here in Denver, Colorado. And it's worth noting that today's show, as always, is produced by Indie Agency News. You can check out all of their information at indieagency.news for all the latest and greatest. Again, for those that are new, why are we here? Why are we talking about agency creation when we could be talking about so many other things? Well, there's a purpose, mission, and hopefully an output to all of this. The purpose really is to educate those of you that are sitting on the sidelines about the realities of starting something new and taking that leap. The mission is really in service to the agency talent around the world and providing them with maybe some confidence, some belief, and the realities of new agency creation. And hopefully the output is to inspire those of you that are watching and have watched our prior episodes. So on behalf of Indie Agency News and myself, thank you for being here. Today is a treat of a different kind. My guest is a copywriter and a creative director. He's created award-winning national and global campaigns for some pretty big brands: Google, Nissan, NBC, Qatar Airways, PlayStation, to name a few. Interesting background, which I'm sure we'll dive into. A native Brazilian, raised in UK. I think we'll get a little bit of that English accent formality on today's call, and spends his time in the spoils south of Nashville in a tiny little beautiful town called Franklin. Please welcome my guest, Alex Goulart, founder of Fire Kite. Welcome.
Thanks, Christian. I appreciate it. And if I sound too formal out of the gate, I can try my best Tennessee accent. I've been working on it for 3 years. So
yeah, maybe we'll throw that in as one of our questions at the end of our show to see how you do for any native Tennesseans. Thanks for joining. Really appreciate it. I know time is in short supply. I normally start with a fairly traditional question, but I saw something on Fire Kite's website that I wanted to raise and kick off our conversation with, because I think it speaks to the enormity of the challenge of starting a new agency. It was mentioned that Fire Kite was a dream 10 years in the making. Which means you're either incredibly busy, you are an analyst by trade, and you're thinking long and hard about the things you do, or maybe it's a combination of both those things. Tell me why it took almost a decade to launch this dream.
Yeah, the 10 years was news to me, actually. My wife pointed out that I've been talking about starting an agency since, honestly, almost 12 years. So that was news to me. I thought it had just been 2 or 3. She said, "No, you've been talking about this forever." So I think it was something that was kind of birthed years ago. I wasn't ready at that time, but over the ensuing years, I felt like I was able just through the experience of being in the agency world, pick up the skills that were necessary to make the leap. So I think the thought was birthed years ago, but only in the last few years did I feel like, okay, it's time to jump.
So why, I guess, let me dig a little deeper into that, because I think there's maybe some lessons we can take from it. What was the impediment to you starting? Was it your own self-confidence? Was it collaborators, partners? What was it that sort of made you question it for quite that length of time before actually pulling the trigger?
Yeah, I think I probably hadn't considered the realities of what it would take to start an agency. It was just a sort of an inkling, a gut feeling perhaps. But I think when you're a W-2 employee and you've just worked your job, gone from agency to agency, the idea of figuring out the operation of an agency, pulling together a team, finding clients, all of that was probably too overwhelming of a thought. So I just carried on with the brief that was put in front of me and working on that. It's very easy to just continue with the thing you're doing. So it was really only in recent years that I thought, okay, I've got enough of a skill set to make the leap, and it came to fruition. But I think it took a bit of time, in the sense of there were things in front of me, there were briefs that looked great opportunities, and just focused on them at the time.
And then oftentimes when I ask this question, there's a lengthy story around how I or the guest has built their agency with a set of collaborators, co-founders, early hires. When you did get around to launching this, who did you decide to build this with? Is it a solo effort by yourself? Are there co-founders, early hires, collaborators that you brought in from the get-go to, sort of help build this business?
Yeah, I had made a connection with a potential client, and I think this ties into the impetus of starting the agency. Meeting a client who said, "We have a great product, we just don't have creative work. We really need creative." He described it as creative copy. This was David McElveen, head of McAlvey Financial Group, it's our biggest client. We've done the most work with them. And he said, "Oh, we have this great product." I met him at a trade show in Vegas. He said, "We have a great product and just don't have creative ideas." I thought, maybe, well, this is what I've done with my career. Maybe I can help you with that. So the conversation began there, and then it became clear that the first project would be strategy. So I went looking for a strategist on that, for that project, and got in touch with Tim Anderson, who's now our head of strategy. And we partnered on that first project that was all of a 7-day project. And that turned into, the client was very happy with that. And that turned into a budget for first campaign, brand platform, first creative work. And then that turned into an AOR relationship. So I pulled Tim into the fold on that. And he's our head of strategy now and works on all the things with me. And then we pulled in more people as needed, and that's continued to be the operation we have now of pulling specialists in. We do have project manager, creative director. There's a team of about 4 or 5 of us, and then a handful of others. But it's just as the need kind of presented itself.
Yeah. So if I understand you correctly, you're actually maybe a little different than some of the others we've talked to on the show that sort of assembled a small team before they kicked off and launched. You actually launched this on your own and brought in talent in response to some of the opportunities you were seeing. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I filed the paperwork for the company and did nothing with it. I just had it as a collection of 3 Tennessee state documents. All right, I've got a company now. And then as the opportunity presented itself, built a team around that and the agency around that.
So as someone who built Outerkind with 4 other amazingly talented individuals that I had worked with for more than a decade, there was a certain comfort I felt in, we're all kind of in this together. And when there's bags under my eyes, there's bags under my partner's eyes, and we're all kind of grinding towards this future. What you actually did is tremendously more difficult, you would say, is that you start a business and you're like, okay, it's me, and adding people. And so again, for those that are listening, I wonder if you could share maybe some of your early thoughts of, if there were any, maybe if you questioned your decision at all, or if this always felt like the right thing when you launched.
In terms of the way we launched, or questioning even starting a company, or the way?
Yeah, just questioning, was this the right thing to do? You were obviously gainfully employed previously, and now you're out on your own, and the support structure is, hey, I'm going to make a phone call to this person I've never met, bring them in for a 7-day strategy session, and maybe we end up, doing more work together. That's just I view that as a certain level of bravery that we haven't yet talked to on this show.
Yeah. I think there was a huge amount of unknown in that, but it felt so right to be doing it. I felt so comfortable with the situation. David McElveen, just a great guy, connected with him. The opportunity looked really interesting, and it's doing what I love, digging into a brand, trying to figure out a creative way to bring it to life. Finding Tim, who's just a wizard of a strategist, a brilliant mind, the way he works and the way he tees up creative briefs. Just a lot of fun to work with him. The client said, I want creative, unusual work. I want to be really distinct from the rest of the financial market. Those are the briefs and situations I had craved over 20 years great client who wants great work, working with great people. So the ingredients were all there. Okay, scary, not on a W-2, not sure when you have to put the for sale sign up in the front yard. I sort of joked about that, over the first year, just holding that for sale sign up. Like, do I need to put it in the ground? Nope, we got another project. Let me just put this back under the staircase. Hopefully I don't need to pull that out. But that does drive you as well, I suppose. Just family, kids, life needs. It's like, this has got to work, and I feel comfortable in the risk of it. I certainly feel like I've tapped into kind of a creative spirit that I did a LinkedIn post about this a long time ago, but it's the creative spirit of my early days with at my first agency, which was in Belgium, a place called Duval Guillaume, Antwerp, which was was very much a conceptual agency. We were always pushing the boundaries of the work we were doing there. And I just loved the creative pursuit. My partner and I, we lived in Brussels, and we'd get on the train to Antwerp every morning, and we'd just come up with proactive ideas, because our creative director said, hey, we know what the brands are at this agency. We know what the taglines are. Go away and come up with award-winning stuff, and we'll see if we can make it. So we'd spend the 40-minute ride just scribbling ideas. I remember one passenger saying, what are you guys doing, with like a stack of little bits of white paper with ideas? We were obsessed. We were 25, 23. But that spirit of, hey, let's come up with something let's dig up something really interesting and different and make our clients famous, and, as we say, legendary with Fire Kite. Getting back to that, it's like a new youth.
I kind of wish you responded to that passenger on the train and said, look, man, I'm solving the world's problems here. What are you doing with your coffee and your croissant?
It's probably a surgeon. It was probably a research scientist who was
right
solving it.
Well, I don't want to belabor the point, but I just think that, again, for listeners, that is a different angle than we have spoken to before. Typically, it's been partnerships or co-founders together that have brought this vision to life after having thought through it for many years, maybe not a decade or 12, as your wife has correctly pointed out. But another piece that I'd love to get some clarification from on your end is, when you did decide to think about putting the for sale sign in the front of your yard, early days in Fire Kite, did you start with clients that were already aligned with this new direction? Meaning, did you have clients that you could work on business straight away, or was it, I got to pick up the phone, I got to get online, and I got to start sort of on the new business hunt? Take me back to those days.
Yeah, I mean, really, this financial client I told you about, McAlvey, allowed us to start by moving from that strategy project to that first campaign, and then off the back of that success, the AOR relationship that cemented us as a company, and allowed me to build with a bit more sort of more sustainable build. But then, as for other clients, a lot have come from word of mouth. Friends of friends. We've done some smaller projects for some non-profits. This year, we worked a lot with Charity Water. They build wells in developing countries. Done a fair amount. That was through a connection, an old friend. We haven't done a ton of the sort of official new business pushes. We've kept fairly busy with contacts in our kind of sphere.
Yeah.
But that will need to. I think. I mean, we could talk about the operations, but that's an area that we're still kind of developing. It's, you hear the phrase "build the plane" as you fly it. It's
as you're flying it. Yeah. I mean, there are some of us that have to engineer the plane while we are plummeting to the earth before we have the wings built. But like, that's another story for a different day. And by the way, you reminded me of a piece of work I saw on your website that was around the Rwandan genocide. Not a terrifically lovely topic, but what powerful work, speaks to your charity chops as well, I would imagine. I just wanted to note that for anyone that was listening, to go check that out, because it is quite moving. Speaking of work, another area of maybe concern for new agency creators is, look, when I start my agency, I don't really have work that's my own. I have to share work that is from my past, and giving it credit, of course, that I created this at, X or Y agency. Was that a thought that maybe was an impediment for you, or did you welcome that and just say, look, we're new, we're going to embrace it, and this is the work, this is the value that I'm going to bring to your brand through the work that we did at prior agencies?
Yeah, I think so. I don't mind showcasing a few pieces in the short term from the last 20 years. I think it helps, any new clients see what the thinking is that we can bring and what the type of work we can create. Hopefully as soon as possible, that we're starting to replace all of that on the site. We don't need to do too much of the past work, but I think that's fairly standard practice as I was looking.
Yeah, and I think it's natural for people to feel that way. And the reason I bring this up again is for those that are listening, that it shouldn't necessarily be a reason you don't do it. You have to start somewhere, right? And so I'm a big fan of obviously giving credit where credit is due in terms of where it was produced, but it also gives your clients a sense of direction as to how you think and what work you view as native to what you create. Let me just shift to another few questions before we get to our rapid fire at the end. Was there anything unexpected that occurred during your, let's say, first year or two of Fire Kite that you wanted to share? Something that you never thought would happen, that you would think others that are in a similar situation would like to know? It could be a client ask, could be an accounting challenge. It could be, how do we track hours on a project? Something that sort of popped up that you thought, man, this was not what I expected.
I mean, everything you're talking about there with operations of client billing, tracking, all the logistics. I mean, I didn't give too much thought to all of that. I'm just sort of taking it as it comes, but certainly feel like I've worn half a dozen hats in this process. I'm sure that's not unique to me at all. I'd have to think about that a little bit more, Christian.
Well, I mean, you are addressing, I think, one of them, which is if you are going to develop a new business in this industry, you're going to wear little hats in a lot of different categories. And you got to be open to learning and actually being uncomfortable. That's kind of what I'm hearing you say is like, I didn't really think about accounting practice, or I thought I'd just send my bills over, but there's a whole sort of logistics and operational part of this business that is key to keeping your lights on. And so while we all have this wonderful sentiment of we want to sit at a table, we want to unpack a strategy, and we want to work on a brief, and we want to, put some ideas up and really poke holes in them, there's another side of this business that's maybe not equally as important, but still pretty critical to your success, that has to be completed one way or the other. And I think that's what you're saying here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one area that I didn't anticipate is just the multitude of choices in terms of where you can take your business. As a CD or a copywriter, you got your brief. It was clear what we did. We brainstormed it. We came up with it. Hired production partners, made the work. Now I sit at this table and I can take the company in a million different ways. How do I focus on in person? Most of my team is LA, Ohio. Most of my small team are outside of Franklin. I've got a couple of people here. Do I try and expand the physical space? I've got one big office here. Do I try and move into a bigger space and have more people in-house? Do I focus on clients in Nashville? Nashville is growing. That's a whole other kind of interesting side of this, is that Nashville doesn't have a long storied ad scene. Let's say, I feel like as a city, we could punch a little harder. And that's sort of an area of interest for me, is to see Nashville rise as a city. I look at Austin, it feels like it's comparable size perhaps, and has a much more developed indie scene. I'd love to see Nashville have more of that. Where do you put all the effort? Where do you focus? Which clients to go after? I think it's the choices before you that is maybe what I didn't anticipate as much.
Yeah. And I think instinctually you have to be okay with being wrong. And we talk about this a lot on this show creatively, like sometimes you're going to be wrong, or sometimes it's not going to hit the way you think it will. But I think as it comes to those choices, right? Do I add 7 desks to my office here and try and focus on local staff? Or do I get the right scalpel of talent that I need in other parts of the country and work more remotely? Those are just 2 of 300 decisions you're forced to make. And fail. My strategy has always been do it, make a decision, fail. And if you're going to fail, fail quickly, or maybe it succeeds, and learn from that.
Yeah. I mean, to that point, I'm sure a lot of people have something along these lines, but over there is a card that says, what would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? And we've
Right.
that before. But
yeah,
if that was the approach, it's like, well, it doesn't matter what you do. what happens if, what if you couldn't fail at all? Then what would you do? Okay, well, then I'll consider everything if that's the situation.
Yeah, that's great. Just one last question that I always like to ask our guests is, imagine that you're speaking to someone who's sitting on the sidelines working in a cubicle at some large holding company agency, who's had a similar thought to you over the past several years of, this is what I'd like to build. These are the choices I'd like to make for my future career. I think I can do this. What would you tell them, those individuals sitting on the sidelines, before taking that leap?
Don't downplay the skill set that you've developed. I feel like as a creative, sometimes in an agency, you might feel that the ideas are undervalued, especially if there are rounds and rounds on a brief. If it feels like you're revisiting a deck for the 7th, 8th time, and you're wondering about the value of your creative thinking, it's a question of where you take that and how you apply it. And if you're good at what you do and you developed a strong skill set, there is a market and opportunity for that in a different context that could be really rewarding. So sometimes it's not just about working harder and trying to grind harder in the place you're in. It's stepping out into a new situation, and then all of a sudden there's fruit from that.
Yeah.
In a way that you didn't imagine could be possible. And then it is ultimately about satisfaction in your work and what gets you up and what's thrilling to you and what's
some pride of ownership, and you're a copywriter by trade, if you had to pigeonhole yourself, as I understand it. And I think in our business, there's such a vast array of skill sets, whether you're a strategist, whether you're a creative, whether you are a graphic designer, whether you are a new business person. And oftentimes in those big holdcos, you get siloed, right? Are you supporting a new business effort? Are you even working on any of that? Or are you just on this one client for 300 days a year? And I think what you've proven by proxy of, hey, I'm actually, my window here has been copywriting. You've already admitted, I'm not an expert in the operations of an agency, nor did you need to be. What you need to do is sort of believe and take some pride of ownership of your own work, and surround yourself, at least in my case, surround yourself with individuals that, maybe are smarter than you and can help, carry the load and feel the same way about the end goal. So I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah. To that point, you mentioned, prior work. As I look back at the work that I'm proud of, all of those pieces took a team of really talented people. Nothing's changed insofar as I've now moved to my own agency, have my own name on the door. I still need fabulously talented people around me to make these things work. I look at the work we've done over the last year. Tim, Zach, my creative director, Kelly is just a wizard in media planning, social media people, the specialisms that you have to bring to the table. It's not one guy with a quill, although there's a quill up there, making it all happen. It's just like in previous, roles that I've had. It's taken a bright and talented team to pull off anything. It's the same. So now it's just finding those people and bringing them to bear on the client needs.
I feel like next time we need a tour of your office. You've got quills, you've got quotes, you've got your name on the door, as you just said. I'm sure that would be helpful. And when I'm in Franklin, I will come see it myself. But Last section of our talk is called rapid fire. And given how thoughtful your responses are and carefully worded they are with your responses, you might struggle a little bit with these, but it's the first thing that comes to your mind. No judgment. So I'm going to ask you 4 questions. First thing that comes to your mind. Number 1, biggest myth about running your own agency. Go. You might have already answered it.
That it's really difficult. It's not actually really difficult. It's, there are trials, but it's not the most impossible thing. So don't overthink it. It's not that hard.
Besides the quill and the quotes on the wall, favorite thing in your office right now?
Picture of me and my wife from our honeymoon 16 years ago.
Where was the honeymoon?
Vieques off Puerto Rico. We were playing tennis. We got a selfie. Love that one.
A little bit more challenging. What's your spirit brand? Think about like a spirit animal, but it's a brand, something that really speaks to you.
Costco.
Got it. And in your best Southern accent, who would you bring in for a creative guest cameo if the world was your oyster?
David Droga.
Got it. That wasn't bad. I'll give you a 7.5 out of 10. Alex, awesome to learn a little bit more about you and learn about Fire Kite. I think you've opened up a bit of a Pandora's box of a different type of agency that was created with, I think, a different level of bravery. I applaud you for that. And hopefully those that have listened today have learned a little bit more about that. So thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Christian. I hope it was a useful chat for others.